I'm actually really excited to hear about the research the Student Association for Psychedelic Studies has been doing at Ann Arbor and U of M. There's some really smart folks over there, always blowing my mind. So I think this will be really exciting and hear what's up in Marquette.
Yeah.
I've met Caden a few times, but we haven't had too many chances to talk to him. So this will be good.
Yeah. All right, and the rest of the panel we got today, we have Jim Salame.
Hey, buddy.
Good to see you. We
Happy
got
to be here.
we got our guest from last week, Julie Barron,
Hello.
and also we got our web designer, Chris Kurtz. What's going on, Chris?
Hey all, how's it going?
Good.
Some really good news, and I think everybody will start to see this good news soon. But I think we've settled on a logo for the Decrim Nature Michigan movement. And so keep an eye out on our socials for that. And I think the launch of the website will be right behind it. Is that correct, Chris?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just about ready to go. It's looking beautiful and has a lot of super informative things, a lot of ways to connect with other cities.
Fantastic. And I'd like to remind anybody that's listening to the show, if you are a Michigan resident, if you are in a city, even if we haven't talked about your city yet, contact us, decrimnaturemi@gmail.com. Let us know where you're at, where you want to organize. We're getting lots of emails every day, and we'd love to connect you with others in your area and help you with the resources you need to do the same thing we did in Ann Arbor, same thing that's going on with our guests we've had from Detroit, Grand Rapids, and this week, Marquette. So if you're interested in getting involved, contact us, please.
And also, I think we have a Decriminalized Nature community meeting coming up March 3rd, I believe.
Yeah, March 3rd, 6:30.
Cool. And that's going to be a Zoom meeting, right, Julie?
It's a Zoom meeting. Yep. And everyone from throughout Michigan is welcome to join us.
Sweet.
Yeah. So even if you're not interested in maybe helping out or starting your city, you just want to know what's going on with around the state, we'll be talking about how to get your city involved, trying to connect people from various cities and get movement started there, as well as discuss what we're doing with the statewide movement, which is picking up steam. And it's also very exciting.
Yeah. Wonder if there'll be like breakout rooms or I don't know, something.
I think if we have enough people, some breakouts by city would be a fantastic thing to do. If I have it my way with some awkward icebreaker in each room set up just to, ease those tensions. I always think they're fun. Everybody else is like, this is so dumb. So yeah, lots of good things going on right now. We're going to get to some psychedelic news here in a bit. Last week, we had started on Good Chemistry by Julie Holland. I have to be honest, as much as I intended to read the second half of this book in the past 2 weeks, I've been incredibly busy and distracted. I did make it another chapter through, but the second half of the book, we had talked about the first half, which was connection with the self, connection with a partner, connection with your child. And this half of the book is about connection with your community, connection with the earth, and then connection with the cosmos. And one of my favorite parts of the chapter I did read is right away she starts talking about the division we see in a lot of, driven by politics and our instinctive nature to label somebody as this type of person or that type of person, even not by political standards, and is discussing throwing away the label. And I really like, she explains an example where she's standing in a grocery line with her husband, and they're just having a friendly chat with the guy behind them. When they get out to the car, her husband's, did you notice the faded NRA cap he was? And she's like, I didn't even, that would have totally rearranged my conversation. I'm really glad I didn't put that label on him, because he was a really kind guy. And it was a really, there wasn't any depth to the conversation, but it was a nice interaction. And I think that's something that psychedelics teach us that we can all bring to the table, is just trying to let go of those labels and those assumptions when we are around people, and just give everybody a fair chance to have a decent conversation, because odds are we can connect with everybody on something, whether it be our interest in music or whatever. So don't jump to labels, and hopefully next week I'll be a little bit more organized. I think Jim's gonna join in with me so we can make it a little bit more discussion based. But on our next episode, February 19th, we're going to be digging into this book, Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. I've heard fantastic things. Lots of my friends are reading it already, and I'm just really excited to get into it. It's about fungi and how they affect our world and change our minds and shape our future. And I'm really excited to jump in. Do you have anything else before we get to news, Colin?
Oh, I was gonna say, Julie, is there a Michigan Psychedelic Society event coming up in the near future?
Yeah, there is. It's actually a combination with Decriminate Michigan, Decriminate Ann Arbor, and Michigan Psychedelic Society, and Thank You Plant Medicine.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to get together on February 20th at 6:30 on Zoom, and we're going to do a plant medicine sharing circle. So just people can share their experiences about plant medicines and ask questions, talk to other people. It's been a while since Michigan Psychedelic Society has held a community meeting. So this is going to be really, really nice to reconnect with everybody and share our stories about plant medicine.
Another fantastic opportunity for anybody in the state that has been, positively affected by these plants. And so we have that opportunity to come up, talk about your experiences. And then again on the 3rd, if you're interested in getting involved in changing the laws around these substances across the state and in your city. So please join us then, tell your friends, share the show, share the events. All of the links will be available on our Facebook and soon to launch web pages.
Awesome. And be sure to make it to the Michigan Psychedelic Society to share your story, because usually people come to the decriminalized nature one to try and share their story and how entheogen changed their lives, and they just come to the wrong meeting. We want to hear it, but we're getting down to business.
Decriminate Michigan is moving full steam ahead, statewide and in several cities. So if you want to get political, that's the meeting for you. If you want to talk about plant medicine and how it's benefited you, come to the February 20 meeting.
Yeah, let's talk about the other states like Massachusetts. Massachusetts
Yes.
is kind of the apple of our eye right now, because they just passed in Cambridge. The city council voted 8-1 to decriminalize nature. And it's the second city in Massachusetts to do so in 2021 already, which, I'm talking to you, Ypsilanti. I mean, you can join Ann Arbor in the same movement, and we can be the second state to have 2 cities, which would be great. In New Jersey, the possession of 1 ounce or less of psilocybin mushrooms has been downgraded from a 3rd-degree crime to a disorderly person offense. This classification lessens the penalty to $1,000 fine or a 6-month sentence, rather than the steeper drug penalties, which were 3 to 5 years in prison.
I think one of the important things to note about that New Jersey thing is, it doesn't sound like a lot. Yeah, they lowered the penalties, but there's still a penalty associated. And a lot of people I've seen just in the past day griping about that. And quite frankly, we need to remember New Jersey hasn't even fully liberated cannabis yet. And at the same time that this passed legislatively and was signed by the governor, there are 2 marijuana bills sitting on his desk that are not getting the go-ahead. So yay for entheogens really, breaking down some barriers in some of those harder to reach places.
Yeah, and good point, Mike. Hawaii recently filed a bill to legalize psychedelic therapies, which is awesome. We have another one, New Psychedelic Reform Group sets sights on Congress as the movement builds. It's the Plant Medicine Coalition, also known as PMC, founded by the head of the Washington, D.C. campaign that got psychedelics decriminalization passed locally in November's election. It's a national organization that hopes to build upon what's already been accomplished and bring the issue to Capitol Hill, in part by pushing lawmakers to approve federal funding for research into the therapeutic potential of substances like psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca. It's pretty fantastic.
This is pretty big news. This is, we're talking about cities and we're talking about states. This is bringing it to the entire US potentially. And this is a really strong group here in DC. So I think there's some good potential there.
I love the big statewide movements. I was just going to say that, if we could, get all the constituents for the representatives in their state legislature or to the senators and write to them and let them know, the potency and importance of these medicines and what they can do as benefits to our society.
Yeah, that's really what I hope to accomplish through Decriminalized Nature Michigan. And I hope that others around can, form that in their own states. And with that Washington, D.C. group, we'll have to get them on the show in the next couple of weeks too. I hope to just understand it a little bit more and, how they have a similar, I think, a bill to our Ann Arbor one too. So that's really great to see.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention too, that's Melissa Lavasani. I've had some contact with her. She was the executive director or the director of Decrim Nature DC. I think it was Prop 81, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I wanted to say too, because the way I'm reporting it to everybody is a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to give the news about Marijuana Moment did report that both Connecticut and Florida have also filed bills. We weren't sure if they had actually been filed, but it is being reported that they've been filed. Florida wants to have a therapeutic approach, so a medicalization model. The Connecticut bill would simply create a task force responsible for studying the medical benefits of psilocybin. So it's a little bit more specific. But it's just, we've got a lot of good news going on. It's pretty incredible. Some of them not exactly how, the decrim nature approach, they're all a little bit different, but it's all very good news.
Yeah, it's just moving the needle forward and,
So we've had Grand Rapids on, we've had Detroit on, Decriminalized Nature's organizations from those cities. We've got Marquette today. What are the other cities? I mentioned Ypsilanti. Who else in Michigan is looking at doing this?
Lansing. We've got a really strong group going on right now in Lansing. A lot of great leaders who are thinking now is the time and ready to come together.
Yeah. I noticed as soon as we connected them all via email, there was no hesitancy for somebody to just step up and, okay, let's get this first meeting rolling. And the conversation just took off organically. So it's really exciting to see this. And we have lots of traditionally drug reform powerhouses located there. So it's really exciting to see that group finally come to fruition. I really feel that out of the meeting on the 3rd, we will probably also have groups popping up in Kalamazoo, Bay City, and Traverse City. Those seem to be the big interest points right now. I know we're planning on having Kalamazoo on in a few weeks. They have the Southwest Michigan Psychedelic Network down there. So we're going to talk to them and talk about Iboga that week. I'm very excited because usually I'm the guy everybody asks for information about an entheogen. Iboga, I am in kindergarten, if not preschool, and I am here to listen, and that's exciting.
Can you give us a synopsis on Iboga?
Yeah, it's an African plant. Yeah, it's an African shrub. It has a small orangish, yellowish fruit. I really can't tell you too much about it. It's really
used for opioid to help combat opioid addiction in one of the most common uses, let's say.
It's one of the few entheogens that has, you know, quite frankly, I'm scared of meeting myself on it. It's a life-changing experience like no other from what I've heard. And I know we say that with just about every entheogen, but just it's the one that daunts me the most. And Barry Richardson, who will be on for that show, has experience with it. And I'm very excited to pick his brain.
What about it makes you nervous, Mike? Because that's the first time I've ever heard you say that about anything.
You
I know it can be like uncomfortable and it can be elongated.
It's for me, when I first started diving into entheogens about 20 years ago, it was the one that like guaranteed the perception of it was going to guarantee that change was going to stick no matter what, and there was no turning back. And you know, we all have a tendency to hold on to something even when we do need to let go, and I think that letting go is something I've done with lots of plants, but each one of them is a very different type of letting go. Cacti, for example, it's very, if I can get metaphysical here, it's very rooted in the heart chakra. Whereas, you know, psilocybin, I feel more in my root and my sacral center, and, you know, maybe up here near the medulla oblongata in the like sixth chakra, but LSD, you know, I seem to be more out the crown chakra and out my third eye. And, you know, Iboga just, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. But yeah. We also have some of our guests joining us now. Looks like we got Nick Glynos here from SAPS. We will get him introduced here in a minute. Moss should be joining us soon, and give us a chance to really quick talk about the entheogen of the week. The entheogen of the week is the ololiuki. I'm never going to say that right. It's the Turbina corymbosa, better known as Rivia corymbosa, or a woody shrub in the morning glory family with white blooms, as opposed to what we're used to in the US of the traditional Impomea varieties that contain a blue or purplish bloom. Their seeds contain LSA, and I'm sure some of the other psychonauts on the show may have something to say about that. Maybe. Well, if not, let's move on. We have both of our guests from SAPS here, and I'm really excited to hear what's going on at U of M. Moss and Nick, fantastic to have you.
Hello, yeah.
Thanks
nice
for having
to
us.
meet you.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. And I was going to introduce them. I got a little bio for both of them. So Nick Glynos is a PhD candidate in molecular and integrative physiology at the University of Michigan. He had attained his undergraduate degree in botany from Cornell in 2018. And at U of M, he's a co-founder of Psychedelic Neuroscience and Therapy, which helped host the university's psychedelic symposium and brought several psychedelic researchers, and he's also the vice president of the SAPS, which Moss Herberhortz Did I say that right? Herbert Holtz or
Herbert Holtz.
Herbert Holtz? And did I say your last name right?
I usually go by Galinos, but
Galinos.
yeah.
Okay. That's what I was thinking when I was looking. But Moss, he is studying at the School of Social Work and expects to obtain an MSW in the spring of 2022. He's the president of the Student Association for Psychedelic Studies, that's SAPS. And Moss has worked to put on events and cultivate connections between those who are interested in learning about the therapeutic use of psychedelics. He hopes to work to ensure that psychedelic therapy is accessible to all those who need it, particularly interested in ensuring the accessibility for Jews of various levels of observance. I was also going to say that Moss is an activist and really involved in a Jewish summer camp too. And yeah, welcome you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before we dive too deep into questions, I just want to give you both a chance to tell us what you guys think. What's going on at U of M? What does SAPS do? What type of research is going on there? And maybe, how can a student there get involved?
Cool. I'll let Nick go first.
Okay. Yeah, I've been at the university a little bit longer. So this is my third year now as a PhD candidate. And I came in to study endogenous DMT. So there's a lab at Michigan where endogenous DMT was first discovered in the mammalian brain. And that's the lab that I joined to do my PhD work. So my focus has really been on kind of the hard science side of it. And I'm trying to understand, why is DMT in the body? What is it doing? And what's its function? And the psychedelic research in the biomedical fields and kind of hard sciences is really starting to take hold at Michigan. So there's a lot of opportunities that are coming about for students that are interested in biomedical work or physiology or neuroscience. But also on the other side of it, we're also getting a lot of interest with just sort of outreach, education, and involvement from other groups outside of the hard sciences. And the group that I helped start, Psychedelic Neuroscience and Therapy, that's sort of a lecture series group that has brought in a number of different speakers and helped host a symposium about 1.5 years ago now. And we're just it seems like there's a lot of interest that's coming about for education, science, and collaboration with psychedelic research. So it's really starting to happen, and more people are getting on board, it seems like.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see all of the interest in both PNT and SAPS. And I'd also like to know that Nick was the president of SAPS before me. So he's been really an important part of SAPS. And I see SAPS as really a place for students who are interested in learning more about psychedelics or already have an interest in knowledge around psychedelics to come together, to learn together, to kind of share in community with other people who are also interested in this topic. And so students can get involved by coming to our events. We have a listserv, we have a Facebook group, we have an Instagram, and we're really trying to provide different kinds of events. We just had an event last night called Psychedelics, Race, and Desk Yoga. One of our board members put on an event with a friend of hers for Black History Month, incorporating elements of yoga, but also talking about some of the history and challenges around accessibility for people of color in terms of research with psychedelics and access outside of research with psychedelics. We try to create events like that, and then also have speakers, like Nick said, to come in and share about their experiences. We had an event with a filmmaker in January. We're actually, I noticed you were all talking about iboga before we came on, and we might be having an event sometime soon with somebody who's involved in research with iboga. So we're continuing to kind of put together events to allow students to learn more about these different psychedelics and how they might be really helpful for people finding healing in their lives.
Really cool. And now you don't have to be a student to see some of these virtual events online, do you?
No, yeah, they're open to community members as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think I know Jim has been attending some of them and he really enjoys it. But also, there was some of your research. It was in a documentary recently. Nick, you sent me like a little doc, or like a YouTube video. Can you kind of share how that came about?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's one of our friends, somebody that we just sort of met online, is kind of an underground DMT enthusiast. And it seems like his sole purpose in life is to fund DMT research, like actually raise money and not just the therapeutic side of DMT research. He wants to know, why is DMT in our body? What's it doing? And this guy, he's fantastic. His name's John Chavez, and he founded a group called DMT Quest. You can see his website, you can find it. And he actually came out to Michigan, and he wanted to do a story on the DMT research at Michigan. So in 2019, there was a pretty impactful paper that was published showing that DMT is present in the rat brain at pretty significant levels. And John Chavez, the founder of DMT Quest, thought that this is one of the most profound papers of the entire 2019, like one of them of all science, is in his opinion. So he's got a really radical view about how important and interesting DMT is. So he came out to interview John Dean, who was the lead author of that paper, and myself, who is sort of continuing on in that line of research. And he's doing it in an effort to try to raise money to support the labs that are actually doing the research on endogenous DMT. So it's really exciting that he's doing it. You know, I didn't think it would have as big of an impact as it's had so far. It's got over 100,000 views in the first week or so that it's been out. And it's just great to have him on our team, you know, to push for the research, push for the funding. And I think there's a lot of talk about doing additional episodes and, you know, continuing on the series. So hopefully that happens, and it's just been great so far.
Sounds really fun and really cool to be a part of that.
I like how you called it radical.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I'm sort of on the more conservative side. I'm like, it could be doing anything, you know, it could be just regulating our, you know, day-to-day physiological functions. It doesn't have to be this crazy out there mystical thing, but it could be. So it's worth investigating.
And so you actually bring up a question I have, Nick, because I see a lot of information, and I don't want to say it's misinformation or even misleading information about, you know, DMT existing in the pineal gland, DMT existing, you know, in various organs. Where does and doesn't DMT exist, or do we know?
We really don't know. We know that it does exist in the brain, in the mammalian brain at least. It's been detected in rats, mice, chickens, and other various animals. It's also been detected in human serum, human blood, human cerebrospinal fluid. And it hasn't really been detected in other organs. Other things that people have looked at are the enzymes that can make DMT and about where they're located in the body. And they're definitely located in the brain. So we know, we have a good idea that DMT could be made in the brain. We don't know if the pineal gland is necessary. We think that DMT can be made without the pineal gland. But really the fact is, we know almost nothing about how DMT is regulated, what it may be doing in the body, and what physiological functions it may be playing.
I appreciate you clearing that up, because I hear a lot thrown around about that, but this is why it's so important, the research you're doing. So this is exciting to know that this is going on right here in Washtenaw County. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yes.
I'm curious, what are the precursors or the ingredients needed to make DMT?
It's such a simple molecule, and it starts from tryptophan, which is that basic amino acid that you get when you eat turkey. It's present in all foods, basically. It's such a common amino acid. So tryptophan, you get it in your diet. Tryptophan in your body gets converted to tryptamine by an enzyme called AADC. And then tryptamine gets methylated to become dimethyltryptamine by an enzyme called INMT. So the two precursors are these enzymes called AADC and INMT. So if you look in cells and you say, here's a brain cell and it contains AADC and INMT, then you can conclude that that brain cell has the potential to make DMT. And the 2019 paper showed that brain cells in the pineal gland, in the frontal cortex, various regions of the cortex contain both of those enzymes, suggesting that they could be making DMT. But the paper also found that regions in the lung, other peripheral organs only contained one or the other of the enzymes. So suggesting that they may not be the regions where DMT is actually produced.
Okay, thank you. Because you hear that a lot. People say you breathe, you can produce DMT from the lungs. I hear that all the time, actually. And so we don't have proof of that at all.
Yeah, Kundalini yoga is like a breath work where you're supposedly you can get to that state of DMT.
Yeah, I mean, we've all probably experienced some, even if it's a minor altered state of consciousness from a breathing exercise or a yoga or a meditation practice, and whether or not DMT is involved in those types of states is completely up in the air. And it's one of the most interesting questions in science as far as I'm concerned, but I'd say there's just no way to say one way or the other at this point, whether or not it's DMT or some other process.
I got a question about the pictures behind you. What are they?
Those are X-rays of a friend of ours who had an accident.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
they're pretty interesting. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's something a DMT researcher would have. I thought it was like an X-ray of like like we're talking about rat skeletons or something. I'm like, what's like is it a rat skull or something?
Yeah, there was a story behind his accident, and it's pretty funny, but we'll save it for another time.
I guess what brought you to research? I mean, I guess in your studies before like coming here, I guess what made you like guys want to like come here to Ann Arbor and study here, or like study psychedelics, I guess.
So my journey to Ann Arbor is not solely based on my interest in psychedelics, but my interest in psychedelics started when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz in California, and where also the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, who's at the forefront of some of the research with the therapeutic use of psychedelics, is located. I was involved with a club there that was closely tied to MAPS. And that's when I first learned about this research. So I've been following the research since 2011. And what really excited me about it is the fact that the research has shown that this could be a really powerful tool for helping people find healing. And part of what motivates me in life and in my career is working to try to help people find the kinds of healing that I have experienced in my life. And so to learn about this potential tool that can really be powerful and helpful for people is really exciting. And so that is the thing that really draws me to psychedelics and a desire to work in the future when psychedelics become legal as a treatment to utilize that resource, that tool to help people find healing in their lives.
Awesome. I guess what are some of the hurdles you see like facing you right now to study some of these studying DMT and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, funding is a big one. So this John Chavez and his DMT Quest movement is it's timely because the funding is really difficult to come about. I'm actually in a period of transition because the lab that I joined sort of does not currently have funding to continue this project. So I have to transition over to a new lab to kind of develop a new project and find a new space for funding. Yeah, and it's still just because it's still fringe, you know, it's not quite as accepted, you know, in a lot of our communities. Psychedelics seem, you know, second nature, and we're used to talking about them and recognizing them as legitimate sources of you know, therapeutic compounds or interesting scientific, you know, substances. But that's not quite the case yet in all of academia, and especially when you consider some of these larger funding agencies that are dictating the research that happens. So that's a big hurdle for us.
What are some of those funding agencies, Nick?
We apply for grants through the NIH mostly, so National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, NSF is another big one. And then there's also sort of internal funding through the University of Michigan, and those are generally just provided through the departments that you work for.
And I don't think you answered the question how you got into your studies and your focus.
Right. So yeah, so it sounded like Moss said his journey to Ann Arbor wasn't strictly because of psychedelics, but mine was. So as an undergrad, I think you guys mentioned in the bio, I studied botany as an undergrad, and I was always interested in, you know, ethnobotany, and I was fascinated by Richard Evans Schultes and Wade Davis and these guys who went to South America and were actually the first ones to discover ayahuasca and bring it back to Western culture for scientific investigation. And I was fascinated by all of this and how people use plants in so many different ways to make poisons and tinctures and medicines and sacraments and so many different things. Was just fascinating to me. And as I finished my undergrad degree in botany, I said, you know, where am I going to take this and where am I going to go? And at that point, the psychedelic renaissance, you know, it was like 2017 and 2018, it was just kind of like just happening. Michael Pollan is coming out with his new book, and I'm just realizing like this old black box of interest that I had sort of hidden away in my mind for the last 5 years of my undergraduate career is now emerging as this new and potential form of like legitimate scientific study. So I was like, I'm going to go for it, you know? So I emailed Rick Strassman and Roland Griffiths and Matt Johnson and all of these, you know, all the big Robert Card Harris. I emailed them all, and I was like, how can I get involved in scientific research, psychedelic research as a grad student? And Rick Strassman actually got back to me, and he's like, do you know Jimo Borjigian at University of Michigan? She's the one who did DMT research and was the first to find this and that. And I said, no, I've never heard of her. So I emailed her, and it worked. So I came here and joined her lab, and that's how it all happened.
Right.
Do you see like a lot of interest now, like from undergrad students trying to get into like studying psychedelics?
Yeah, I think Moss and I can both speak to that. I mean, I feel like I get an email every other day, it seems like, from somebody that's saying, how can I get involved, or can you add me to the listserv, or yeah, there's a lot for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely students who are currently at UMich, and I'm sure people who are looking into grad school who are asking about, is there research being done at UMich around the therapeutic use? As Nick mentioned, there is research here at UMich around endogenous DMT, but we don't currently have any sort of program like the ones at Johns Hopkins that are focusing on the therapeutic use of psychedelics. And there certainly are students who have expressed like an interest in that, and kind of some disappointment that hasn't happened at UMich. I think there's some discussion around the potential of that being something in the future, but nothing concrete has come of that as of now. You know, hopefully maybe one day we'll see more of that therapeutic research here at UMich. There certainly is at least some interest within the student body for that kind of program to be available for students.
So what type of, I know you're in working on your MSW Moss, you're focused on endogenous DMT. What other types of, you know, majors and focuses do you see popping up through SAPS, and what other types of fields can we expect to see research coming out of?
There's in MAPS, there's students from, there's a lot of social work students, but there are also many students from different departments who have just an interest in psychedelics, who aren't hoping to become a psychedelic researcher or a psychedelic therapist, but like want to know more, are interested in learning more about this topic. So for example, we have students who are in computer science, and they're not necessarily deciding that they want to dedicate their lives to psychedelics, and they still have interest in learning about, all the research that's being done with them.
Is anybody researching them as they microdose and become computer gurus? I may be reaching, but
No, not that I know of.
I actually had another question for you, Nick. Does the research you're doing with endogenous DMT, does that require the Schedule 1 license that would be required if you were working with synthetic DMT?
It actually does not require the Schedule 1 license, and we haven't had it in the lab that I was previously working in. But I mentioned before that I'm changing into a new lab situation, and with that lab we do have a Schedule 1, and we plan to do studies with exogenous DMT, or administering DMT to animal subjects. So.
There's not research, there's not therapeutic research going on at U of M right now, but can you speak on the progress of it? Like, do they give it to you to smoke and you blast off and then you have like a therapy session after that, or do they do it intravenously? And like, what do they know the best technique?
IV or something?
Yeah, so there's no human work with DMT happening at Michigan, or even in the works to be happening. I think there may be some potential trials with psilocybin in the future, but that's still in the works, and there's not much information about that yet. All the work that I was speaking of before is with animals. So we're basically just trying to understand the neural correlates of the DMT experience or the psychedelic experience using animals. And using test animals, you can actually get at that question in different ways than if you were to use humans, because you can do more invasive work. So with humans, you can do like surface level brain recordings. With animals, you can actually probe deeper into the brain to find out what's happening in some of the more basal or more ancient structures of the brain. So that's an interesting reason to use animals, but no human work with any of those substances yet.
Okay.
What about building off of what Nick, what you just said, is there are two up and coming research studies at U of M that don't have full information out. One of them microdosing psilocybin, and so that one will be interesting. And the other one is using psilocybin, so for two different purposes. But I do at least know one of those has funding and is starting the building of the research and what that's going to look like. The other one I know got like DEA approval or something. I don't even know if it's DEA or FDA approval, or maybe both, to bring in psilocybin, probably truffles from the Netherlands, to use as their source.
What about what MAPS has discovered so far? Like, what does a typical therapeutics DMT session look like?
MAPS is not. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, no one has. Okay.
MAPS isn't doing research with DMT. MAPS is right now focusing on MDMA.
Have there been any worldwide studies for therapeutic DMT?
Not that I know of.
For therapeutic DMT, the you have to look to ayahuasca. That's the substance that's been used for investigating DMT's therapeutic potential. But as far as human trials with DMT, they've been done in Imperial College London, led by Carhart Harris and Chris Timmerman, were the two who led that study. And they did, like I mentioned, doing the neural correlates of the DMT experience. So DMT given by injection, and then putting on an EEG cap, measuring what's happening in the brain during the DMT experience, in conjunction with measuring the subjective effects of that experience. So that's what's been done with DMT in humans. in modern research, but all the therapeutic stuff is pretty much ayahuasca.
And and also Rick Strassman has done research with humans in DMT. It's actually the first research done after there was the first study that got approval by the U.S. government after many decades of psychedelics not being allowed. Rick Strassman was the first one to get approval to do a study with humans where he administered DMT to humans to learn about their experiences with it. And I'm sure Nick could share more about that too.
Is ayahuasca, does that like take place in the same part of the brain then? Or is that related?
It's difficult to, I mean, ayahuasca is more challenging because it's not just DMT. It contains other psychoactive compounds and other compounds that may not be psychoactive, but are still having some off-target effects. But the experience of ayahuasca, as far as what happens in the brain, is pretty much in line with the effects of other psychedelics, with altered functional connectivity of brain networks and activation of similar receptor types. So ayahuasca is in line with the other serotonergic psychedelics like LSD, psilocybin, and DMT.
Okay, interesting.
So I know you said your history, you actually started in botany, Nick, with an interest in ethnobotany. Being at U of M, one of my good friends and professor, Scott Heron, is actually a visiting research professor at the Arboretum there. His PhD was ethnobotany, and I was wondering if you'd had a chance to meet him or talk to him.
I haven't, but I'd be interested to, yeah, because I've just got that old, deep interest in botany and ethnobotany. So it'd be great if you could connect us.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect you.
Cool.
Well, cool. We're gonna have to wrap this section up, but thank you, Nick and Moss, for coming on. And you guys can stay on if you'd like. But we have our guest from Decriminalized Nature, Marquette. I'm sorry, I don't see him. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, Caden's there. Hey, I just wanted to say, Moss and Nick, you guys got to come back and visit us again. We got to have a kind of a follow up to all this. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, thanks all you guys for having us, and yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, I certainly didn't get to dive into some of my questions. I had these shows always just kind of take an organic flow, and something's brought up, and I'm like, that brings up a new question. Don't get to half the questions they want to know. So definitely would love to have you guys back and talk some more.
Let's do it. Yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. And then we do have Caden Reed connected now from Decriminalizing Marquette. Hello, Caden. You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Good to go?
Oh, yep.
Okay, Zoom's still a little weird for me even after like a year and a half of using it.
Cool. And I got an intro for Caden too. So Caden Reed's from Saginaw, and he moved to Marquette back in 2016 to pursue a degree in biology. He spends a vast majority of his time in the woods, foraging herbs, roots, and saps, or just being an observer. He enjoys alternative methods of healing, specifically through meditation and psychedelics, and works those into other things like Thai body work. Is that right?
That was something that I was introduced to. Not that I do, but it was something that I was introduced to that did a lot for me.
Cool. And which has allowed him the space to grow. And through this, he feels a passion to pursue this type of work. So welcome, Caden.
Thanks for having me on. This is awesome experience.
Hey, where are you at, Caden? You got the craziest little setup there. It looks awesome.
I'm so I live on a little homestead off-grid just north of Marquette. It's called Moon Mountain. Some friends of mine own it. I moved out here about a year and a half ago, and I've been here since. I'll be moving out here in a few months, but it's just been its own adventure that, again, with like finding space to grow and heal, this has just been another part of that.
Cool. It looks like I know I've been up to Marquette for vacation several times. It looks like a bunch of different cabins that I've been up there. Upper Peninsula feel to it.
Yeah, that's being in a log cabin in the middle of the woods. That's all the UP is about.
Do you have electricity?
No electricity, no running water, and I use a wood stove. So
How
just
did
kind
you
of enjoying the rustic life.
are you just coming through like through your phone?
No, I've got a laptop. I use a hotspot on my phone, actually. It's how I finished my last year and a half of school, too. Like I said, it's been a really interesting journey doing the decrim stuff from out here, doing school. It's had its challenges where computers just shut down and don't work, or internet doesn't work in the midst of an exam or whatever it may be. I was worried as I was getting ready for this meeting, actually, it decided to do an automatic update. And it took like, I turned my computer on at 4 and it was 4:35, 37, like right before the time that the computer finally like finished updating. So I've been listening on my phone the whole time otherwise.
Oh man, I hate that. It doesn't always at the wrong time.
You learn to live with it. Like I said, it's been a reoccurring problem over the last year, but you find a way to find balance with it.
So, Caden, how did you first kind of hear about decriminalized nature, and like how did it start up in Marquette?
So I guess back, what was that, with COVID, times just been so weird. I think was it 2019 when Oakland like first started?
Yep.
So that April and May, I was getting started on a golf course working, and the easiest way to pass the time was listening to podcasts. So I was listening to Psychedelics Today all the time, and that's still to this day one of my favorite podcasts in regard to information on psychedelic news. I listened to that every day, and they started talking about the decrim movement. And right around then, I had a friend that was trying to get me to help get Students for Sensible Drug Policy moving more here at Northern Michigan in Marquette. It never took off, sadly. All the people that were actually involved in it ended up moving away. They graduated, so it just kind of faded off on its own. But that motivated me, where I was trying to start another club on campus that was going to be like Northern Michigan Psychedelic Education and Outreach. And like all of this, I read a lot and found everything so fascinating. And I just wanted to share the information with people. I wanted to like help break that stigma. It was something that came across really important to me for a while, and over the last year or two has just grown more and more heartfelt importance. But yeah, so the club never ended up working out, some background issues. So I decided to move into the city instead of focus on the school, and I wanted to follow suit with Oakland. So that summer, I at least started the Instagram page, Decrim Nature Marquette, and like used it as an educational outlet, and like it had a name that could associate more nationally, so it had more recognition. And it took off for a while and was going good. I was getting a lot of attention and able to make new connections constantly. And then COVID slowed everything down for the last year. But yeah, I just started really taking off with it again like a month and a half ago. And again, I'm kind of like slowing down. We've faced some weird walls that I keep running into in life.
Cool. Yeah, I know that I met Mike through Students for Sensible Drug Policy too, and I started.
I think that was where I first met him. I think I first talked to him like 2 years ago there, but like it through a phone call or email or something. But I remember being in touch with him before anyone else in regards to Michigan. Well, Kalindi was actually the very first person I ever talked to, and then he put me in contact with Mike, and then after Mike, it kind of just took off to where I started hearing about Julie and everyone else, and it kind of finally gave me the connection I needed to try and move forward.
How did you meet Kalindi?
So when all of that whole decrim idea started, and I was thinking like, okay, do I start a club on campus? Do I do a chapter of Michigan Psychedelic Society? Like, what do I do to get this going up here? I was trying to find a phone number for Michigan Psychedelic Society, and I Googled Michigan Psychedelic Society, and the phone number that came up, I call it, and his voice is like all like sputtering and everything, answers and is talking, and I can't tell what's going on, so I hang up. It was just weird. It was a strange interaction. A couple minutes later, I get a phone call again. Mind you, it's like 8 in the morning, probably 7:30 in the morning. I get a phone call again right back, and it's Kalindi, and he's like, sorry, I was in a subway. Like, what can I do to help you? And I didn't realize I was reaching straight out to him. I don't know how I ended up with his phone number. but we just chatted on the phone for a little while, and then yeah, he just was talking about Michigan Psychedelic Society, and that's where I finally like dove my connection in, so I at least had people to talk to try and get everything going up here. It was, yeah, it's really funny to me. I really wish I would have gotten to know him in person. Everything he talks about, some things are of course a little wild and out there, but for the most part, I believe in everything that he would talk about and teach. Yeah, wonderful man from everything I was able to watch in his videos. So I'm grateful to at least have had those few moments on the phone with him.
Yeah.
So I know Decriminalizing Marquette is one of our longer standing groups in the state, but like you said, COVID presented its complications to us all, kind of put you in a lull for a while, and you're just getting going again. But have you had a sense, since you've actually had some time, to get the temperature of any of your council members or other members of the community? Do you think this is something that could gain some traction if you had a group? I
believe deeply that Marquette we're progressive enough, and it's such a connected community. I don't know. I'm from Saginaw, and so I mean, Shields, where I'm from, is a small town everyone's friendly for the most part, but it's not some tight community. Marquette is like, I understand what community is now, and that has its ups and downs. So in regards to like normal members of the community, I think there's a lot of interest here. I've talked with practicing like retired surgeons, retired therapists, people that have gone to Peru and Chile for the last 30 years to learn ceremony on ayahuasca. Like, the people exist up here to support it. I don't know where I lose them. The problem more than anything seems to be just getting people to commit time, which you find that all over the place, whether it's a decriminalized movement or just starting any normal club. And I served on a board before, and I was guilty myself when I was a board member on the UP Land Conservancy. I occasionally failed to make meetings, and it slowed things down. So like, I get why it happens. So I'm hoping in the future I'm able to find more community members to actually sit in regularly. I have a handful that have always been around since the beginning, but they're so busy with so many other things, it's hard for them to actually like go out of their way in their spare time besides the hour-long meeting. In regards to council members, that's been its own interesting journey. Progression, again, 90%, we only have there's 5 city council members, city commissioners, and then the pro tem, and then the mayor. So 7 in total. I see easily a majority of them, knowing them kind of personally and just understanding their backgrounds and knowing them through other people. I see us in a very good position that these people would support this. But recently, Mayor Smith, Jenna Smith here in Marquette, we've talked a handful of times. She's aware of all this, and her most recent comment to me was that Marquette's not ready for it. And at first I was too giddy. This was a couple weeks ago. Like, I had finally like really got the ball rolling again. So I was like, no, Marquette's ready. We're ready. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say that. I didn't respond that, of course, but like, that was my thought. I just got to find another way to do this. And she's right. After a couple of conversations with a few other people, there's just not structure here yet. Like, yeah, of course we could decriminalize whether it's just mushrooms or all 4 of the substances, but there's no education source in town. There's no community outreach center. There's nothing for people to actually like go and ask people questions and know what these things are for and understand what's going on. And like how in Colorado, when Denver did their whole decriminalize initiative, they started creating committees and boards and everything else to like provide safe insurance around this. So I've kind of since decided, like, I'm going to take a step back. Someone told me that one of the doctors that I talked with that goes down to Peru had mentioned to me that, like, just be still, just sit and be with it and let it do its thing in its own journey. So for the last couple weeks, I've slowed down. I've tried to assess the situation and see what can be done in Marquette. And I've realized that at like the root of all of this, I just really want to help people again find these other methods of healing, whether that's entheogens or it's massage therapy or meditation or yoga. And I include all of those things because when it comes to psychedelic therapy, one thing that I've learned from reading and experience is integration is the most important thing out of it all. And if you don't know how to integrate the experience afterwards, or you don't have someone helping you integrate, it's like someone telling you how to kick a soccer ball, but you never doing it. Like you might understand the process, but you're still not actively practicing this idea to get better at it. So with that being the like root of this, that I've always wanted to just help the community and help the people around me. Similar to, I think it was Moss that had mentioned like his experience in healing and wanting to just help other people find those methods of healing. Like that's where this all comes from me. So I'm hoping right now to pause decrim until the summer, kind of let the election, the COVID, everything kind of just move on by here in Marquette. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it would be an amazing thing to get started. I'm starting to reach out and talk with people and work with a group in Marquette to try and make it happen. I want to start a nonprofit up here to create the structure that decriminalizes, something along the lines of like a UP alternative healing initiative, something that like helps people get access to breath work or meditation or yoga or any of these things. And then maybe there's a committee in this nonprofit that does entheogen education in the town. And through this nonprofit, it would be able to endorse decrim and again, be an educational source in the city that like provides this structure that I keep repeating myself about. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I've paused decrim. I still education more than anything. The Facebook page, Instagram page, whenever I get the time in my day that I'm not brewing or whatever else, I am reading articles that I can, whether it's on Psychedelic Science Review or from Psychedelics Today or MAPS or John Hopkins. And trying to like reiterate that on those social media pages to get the information out. Yeah.
That was one of the biggest pieces for us was just utilizing that social media every time a new article hit, even if it was the same article as yesterday, but a new news source, like just keep driving it home on those social medias and then pick one key issue a week. So I think the structure thing was a concern when we first started in Ann Arbor pre-COVID. It did take us a while with COVID. We hit a lull as well. But I think a lot of it's just the lack of education. And so one of the things we did was once a week, instead of every time something came up, we would send every council member a similar email that's like, this is the week in review in psychedelics. And, you know, this is the research, this is the supporting thing. And every one of those emails that had new research, new cities, whatever that was going on, we had some organization, we had a vets organization that deals with veterans with PTSD, write a letter in support. And every week when we sent out the, you know, news and research, we attached one of those letters and just, we drove that home every single week. It was expected. It wasn't overwhelming. It came roughly the same day every week. It became an expected thing. And by the end, the overwhelming recognition that some of the structure that is theoretically needed is actually not, you know, I personally, I found healing through psychedelic plants without any structure, as I'm sure most of us did. And I think, you know, while a structured setup is really important, and what definitely helped us in Ann Arbor was the existence of Michigan Psychedelic Society. But maybe driving home some of the supports that do exist throughout the state. I know it's really easy to think of the UP and the Lower Peninsula as almost two separate worlds.
Yeah, we're totally different.
But within the state of Michigan, we do have harm reduction organizations and organizations that teach safe use. We do have organizations that serve the whole state to help integrate those experiences that not only meet in person, but during COVID times, have even done integration circles digitally.
That was something that I was considering moving forward up here in Marquette, is like trying to get people to do that.
But I also want to say, you know, we're all with Decrim Michigan. We all worked very hard on the Ann Arbor campaign, and the main purpose of this show is to emphasize the growth of the movement in Michigan and provide support to our cities that guest on the show in any way possible. So if there's anything you need, we're here as your support to make sure Marquette can have any structure that is needed.
And you and Chris and Julie, Colin, Jim, all of you have expressed that so much over the last couple months that I've been sitting in on the committee meetings for Michigan and whatever decriminalized nature meetings are going on. And I can't be thankful enough for that, because like I said, I definitely have the drawbacks up here. And sometimes it's a little, I talked with Chris recently, sometimes it's a little defeating when you like type up this whole agenda and get everything ready for this meeting where like 15, 20 people tell you like they're ready to be there and they're excited and this and that, and then time comes for the meeting and only one person.
Hey,
those moments get a little rough. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to ask, how is cannabis accepted up there? What's the reception of cannabis being legalized in the state? Because I really think, and the reason why I'm asking is because a lot of the things that we did for cannabis and a lot of the education that's out there now, we have to kind of start doing that with psilocybin and cacti and to educate people. And that could be a nice parallel avenue with people that are backing that up there.
It's something, so like, again, the support's been there all over the place. So like the people at the hydroponic stores up here and the owners of the dispensaries have like expressed support, but won't express connection in a sense, like they won't involve themselves. Kind of just this weird area. But in regards to cannabis in the UP, when it went recreational, it kind of, specifically in Marquette, it took off. I mean, by the time this summer comes around and they're all finished being built, I think there'll be 5 recreational dispensaries within like a mile and a half of each other. And Marquette's a small town, so like.
Is there a health department specific? Is there a health department specific to Marquette that you can contact and see if they have information about cannabis?
Probably Marquette County.
I was going to say, I've looked at Marquette County reports before, and that's the thing too, is you look at the health reports, and I mean, I've had a little bit of a conversation with the police department. Psychedelics are like of least concern because there's a really bad methamphetamine problem up here. Alcohol and methamphetamine are like the 2 biggest problems in the UP, which again was even more reason for me to want to do this up here, was because psilocybin, ayahuasca, ibogaine, mescaline, all of these substances in their own way are a tool to help with alcoholism or methamphetamine addictions. And the UP is a beautiful place, and every person I've met up here has just been absolutely so much friendlier than I would have ever expected random people to ever be. So I'd like to just try and help this community get that, because like those are ugly things to be struggling with. But again, not to tangent on that too much, they told me it's not much of a problem up here, psychedelics. I mean, in the going on 5 years I've lived here, there was one really big drug bust in Marquette, and it was because someone had apparently ordered off the dark web methamphetamines, and someone in the house was growing mushrooms. The guy growing mushrooms actually like got a slap on the wrist and was let go. Like that's not their concern again. Which is what comes to this whole structure idea, is that like they don't see it as a concern, but since they don't see it as a concern in the city, they're also like, what's the point of changing it if we're not attacking it? Like unless you can give us a really good reason and support for why it should change, and you can get enough people in the city to say the same thing, there's no reason for us to change it. So that's kind of, like I said, I think the city council members and everyone else are progressive enough to make it happen. We just need more support from the city, like actual members of the community. And that's the one main thing I'm struggling with.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I felt we had the exact opposite reaction with Ann Arbor, was the fact that within 7 years, there had only been a couple psilocybin related arrests and no other entheogen related arrests. And they were so non-important to what was actually happening with the police department that they didn't care that we wanted to do this. They thought, well, sure, let them do this. It doesn't actually change anything. It just makes it official. And for us, I think our big argument was the reason it needs to happen, regardless of the fact that it does seem a bit symbolic, is the ability to protect community ceremony, the ability to gather in a group, you know, and do this as a community, as well as, you know, responsible sourcing. The fact of the matter is, while it may not be an issue as far as policing goes or incarceration rates, it is being used by a significant portion of the population. And if we can create a means to take away any black market, to allow a homegrown and a grow, gather, gift model, we now are creating community and keeping things local without empowering illegal activity. Because as long as they're illegal, the people that are gonna, yes, it'll be the person that's into psychedelics that's just gonna grow mushrooms and sell mushrooms. But with it being illegal completely, they're going to be sold. And a lot of times that's your everyday drug dealer. And while I'm a firm believer all drugs should be decriminalized, in the case of Marquette and the problems Marquette would consider a Marquette problem, methamphetamine dealers are in fact sourcing mushrooms and selling them for profit, which empowers their often dangerous business model of methamphetamine sales. And so I think drawing attention to who are we empowering, even though it's not a, you know, focus of the police, who does the black market up there empower, and how can we give that power back to the community?
I hadn't even thought about it that way in regards to the fact that, like, the empowerment of the people that we're trying not to. And you were bringing up a point in regards to, like, it not being a problem, and like, where is the issue with that? And one of the things that, like, I've come to learn, it's been a thought on my mind at least for the last couple of weeks, is that, like, we decriminalize and it doesn't, like, there's this weird misconception that still is somehow floating around that, like, you decriminalize these and now everyone's going to be on mushrooms or whatever. And it's like, no, the people that have been taking them are now going to feel comfortable knowing that they can do it at their own home without going to prison or anything like that. People that have never done it are probably never going to still do it. And then you might have some people that are curious that now have the proper resources and education to understand it.
To me, that sounds like lowering challenging experience rates. The ability to feel safe in my home with my growing mushrooms on mushrooms. Right there, that's that set piece, that mindset piece. If I go into that experience with any amount of paranoia, no matter how unfounded it might be from the reality of the situation that they're not really looking for it, that paranoia feeds challenging experiences.
I mean, that was like, there was a time in Marquette that I was on a hike with some friends years ago, and we had all delved in some mushrooms. And on the hike, we ended up seeing a DNR officer walking through the woods, and federal officer. And even though it's not like he's gonna know, we're just walking through the woods. We all just got shaky and nervous and uncomfortable and, like, turned around and walked the other way and, like, disappeared into the woods. And, like, for like a half hour after that, we were all just in this weird, like, I don't know if we should leave the woods until this is all over. Like, we need to just stay right here. And it ended up being a really funny experience and laughing in the end, like realizing like we could have just kept walking. But like, that point being, like, if there isn't this uncomfortable idea of like, I eat a little mushrooms and it makes me smile more, I might go to jail. If we can get rid of that and just let people go, I eat a little bit of mushrooms, I might find myself smiling more often, or I might see a reason not to be so sad about this day. Like, if we could just let people have that opportunity, not have to worry about this whole police thing, at the very least, like allowing a call to an ambulance if you feel you need it, like allowing some sort of structure for that. I think stuff like that would do communities around the state, around the country, around the world a lot better. Like, the problem isn't that people are taking these substances and going crazy and selling it and this and that. Like, the problem is that people, I mean, I've got a friend right now. I'm trying to talk with Tristan out of Texas. Tristan, right?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, so I'm waiting to hear back from him. So I actually, like, this is just another motivation for all of this. A really close friend of mine here in Marquette was road tripping and just exploring while he had some time off just a couple months ago around the country. And in Texas, he got caught with like not even a gram of mushrooms, and they arrested him for a whole week. And now he's back up here. Last night, I just wrote this whole letter with a bunch of research attached to it to, like, I emailed it to him to send to the judge, and he's asking everyone to do that because he's facing 2 felonies. Potentially, and it's Texas. Like, everyone knows Texas is one of the roughest places when it comes to that kind of stuff. As much as, like, to some people saying he's facing life in prison, it sounds a little dramatic. When you're talking about Texas, you get in this weird area where, like, they kind of don't seem to care right now. And
Texas
that's just more reason. Like, think of someone, I mean, whether it's cannabis or anything, barely a gram. I mean, that's a couple microdoses. Like, that's, again, enough to make someone, that's what do they say? A museum dose. You can still function and go out and look at art and be a normal, active member of society. Like, that wasn't anything.
That's approaching John Sinclair territory with selling 2 drunks to undercover narcotic agents.
That's new to me. I'm sorry, I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, well, that's just, it sounds like a similar thing happening, but with mushrooms, 1 gram should not incarcerate somebody.
Oh yeah, no matter what it is, even as much as I don't like even talking about the substances, heroin, cocaine, or any of those things, like, if you're not a gram, of course, it gets different depending on the substance you're talking about. But point being, like, no one deserves prison for possession of something. Like, at the very least, some sort of medical professional to see if it's like a medical issue, or a psychologist to see if it's some other. It's like, to give people options. Don't just send them to prison over these things. Like, that's why I like what Colorado did that as a state, didn't they? They decriminalized all Schedule 1, or am I?
So Governor Polis defelonized.
Defelonized,
it wasn't fully decriminalized, but there are
not decriminalized, defelonized. Yeah, okay.
Anymore. One of the things I find interesting about Texas psychedelic law, and Tristan may slap me if I get this wrong, but my understanding is fresh mushrooms are actually okay in the state of Texas, and obviously not to eat, but because they grow so abundantly, it's you can't get in trouble for accidentally picking the wrong mushroom. There's protections against getting in trouble for fresh field-picked mushrooms, even though, like,
that's
if you
crazy.
hop in a farmer's cow field, you're gonna get shot in Texas.
Yeah.
You may not be in legal trouble, but fear for your life.
Oh my God. Sorry, I'm at the end of that conversation there. That I have nothing else. I guess I can say that.
I think
No, but I was gonna say, it sounds like honestly, it's like a get out action thing for to get help. I mean, for all of us to, like, help him out down in Texas, and other people. I know that I read recently Port Townsend, Washington. They're trying to also get a decrim nature resolution passed, and that would be like the smallest city to ever pass a decrim nature. It's like got
Do you know what their population is?
I think it's like 8,000 or something like that. So like I
Yeah,
know
it's less than half of Marquette even.
yeah. But it's all because like they tried to get it through last year, and then the city council turned them down, and somebody in the group kind of was arrested on a small amount of mushrooms. And so yeah. But looks like we're kind of going towards the end of the show here. But thank you for coming on today, Caden. We really enjoyed you, and we will have you back definitely again to get an update on what's going on up there.
Thank you again for having me on. I hope I'm a very tangential person, so I hope I didn't go off on too many of those there, but it was wonderful to be a part of this. And thank you for giving Marquette this space too, because I think this will really help. I was seeing, it was crazy. I was even seeing people back in Saginaw when I was just watching it from Facebook. I was seeing people that I went to high school with watching it. So to see like that reach kind of moving around already, I'm thankful, because I think this will really help.
So I know you mentioned social medias.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get that plug in. You're on Facebook and Insta.
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram.
Your email is decriminature Marquette?
Marquette, yes. decriminature@gmail.com.
Okay.
I got a bunch of things going on.
We got the Ann Arbor, the Michigan, a couple alternates, and try and sort through them sometimes.
Yeah, but if anyone searches on Facebook or Instagram, Decriminalize Nature Marquette, it should pop up, no problem. One thing too, I guess, like, as to anyone that is watching this right now or going to see it in the future when it's on YouTube, the whole Thank You Plant Medicine, I'm taking people's testimonials all over the UP, really. I mean, Marquette, of course, but anywhere in the UP. Send your story to me. I will share it anonymously. I'm trying to put that together. I have a half a dozen so far. I think that's something that is also going to help put Marquette a little further ahead when like they start seeing like people around here are actually sharing stories. Yeah, and anyone can always reach out to me. You can read Facebook, Instagram, whatever, anytime. I'm always available to talk. I love to meet new people and anyone that wants to help in any way, shape, or form.
Cool.
Sweet.
Well, hopefully this brings in a few extra people for you, because it certainly sounds like you need a little bit more support. I know that's something we struggled with at first, was really getting a solid team of people that could commit some time. This can't be run by one person.
Yeah. I'd love to if I could.
It always takes that one person with the initiative to create the space, start talking about it, and you're doing that. So now all you need is some people that are committed, that are willing to join, and hopefully we can help you find them.
Thank you. I think they're right around the corner.
I think so too.
Tim, were you?
I do want to ask one more question about the UP. We're so dislocated from you. There's a whole bridge.
Yeah, like what is it? Like a 5-mile bridge or something? 3 mile?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That's the smallest part. Michigan and Lake Huron get way bigger. But I know it's not your location. But any thoughts about other potential UP cities? Like, is Houghton on the radar?
Yes.
Like,
So I don't think really Marquette is the hub of the UP. Houghton is like right behind it. There's no one up there. I've had a couple people randomly message me and say like they're interested in doing the same thing up there, but no one ever follows up. I'll give them a reply, and then that's kind of it. There's been 2 or 3 people, and it's dead ended. I'm starting to go and hang out in Houghton a little more. So I'm hoping throughout like getting to know some people in the Houghton area, I can potentially get something started at least, even if it's just 5 people that are getting all excited and talking. Point being, like getting the conversation, like you said, going up there. That's the only other city in the UP that I think will have any sort of potential for that. I mean, maybe Sault Ste. Marie. I don't want to like pull Lake Superior State University out of everything, but it's the 3 college towns that if there's any potential anywhere, it's them. And Northern and Tech are the 2 to do it. Northern actually, I think Northern's on a good path for stuff like this up here, because Northern was the medicinal plant chemistry program, and they took off with that for the whole. Michigan has the marijuana degree. That took off a lot, and I'm actually hearing conversations from students about professors starting to make discussions of similar to what CMU did. They had that first psychedelics class offered on campus. Can't remember exactly what it was. I think they ended up doing that, Central Michigan. Yeah, I see Northern on a very similar path to that. Maybe not Tech as much, but Northern's a very biology and chemistry oriented school and nature oriented school. So I see it as a very possible thing up there, at least.
I mean, I'm glad you did bring up Lake Superior State, because in my mind, you say UP and where's possible, I immediately think Northern, Tech, Lake Superior State.
I can't, it's a smaller school, but I won't leave them out of it. I haven't visited the Sioux, so I don't know much, but I'd still, those are the only places up there.
Well, we are running up on time. Thank you, Caden, very much for being here.
Thanks, Kate.
I look forward to continuing these conversations at Decrim Nature Michigan meetings, and hopefully we extra community meeting for the statewide. And I don't know if you were here for the beginning. We actually have 2 statewide community meetings that I want to mention again. February 20th is the partnership with Thank You Plant Medicine with Michigan Psychedelic Society, Nature Michigan. That's more of a community-based, talk about your experiences, talk about how plants have benefited you. And then if you're more interested in how, you know what they've done for you, and you don't really need to share it anymore. You want to make this happen in your city, or you're part of a city that's already happening and you're just not part of the movement. Well, you want to find the nearest city to you that's going to do it. Come to the community meeting, March 3rd at 6:30 p.m. So hopefully we get you some extra people then, and yeah.
Onward and upward.
Do we have any more announcements, Jim or Colin? I feel like we missed something during the beginning of the show.
There are 226 days left until our very first Entheo Fest on September 19th.
Ask about that.
Thank you, Chris. I knew I had thought of something while we were talking to Nick and Moss, but that's what it was.
At the buzzer.
We're hoping to partner with SAPS in Ann Arbor. We've got some really big ideas for it. Hopefully COVID will permit. It does seem like the city and county are going to be very much on board with some of our plans. So we're working on permitting issues right now and just getting permissions for spaces. But we're planning on doing something that nobody's ever seen before. And I know there's some psychedelic festivals out there, but we're really looking to up the ante. So stay tuned. And how many days did you say, Chris?
226.
Nice.
226. Oh man, I'm gonna have to start counting down on my calendar. That's getting too close. There's a lot of work to do.
Less than a sun cycle. It'll be here like that.
Yeah.
I love
I'm
that.
excited. I'll be down there. Maybe I'll finally get to see all your faces in person. I know, Chris, we're gonna mountain bike eventually.
Yeah. I'm gonna come up to the UP, but yeah, you got to make your way down for sure.
Well, wonderful.
We'll share some resources.
Well, that's all. Thank you, Caden. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chris. Colin, as always. Julie looks like she took off, but I believe.
And thank you, Mike.
Oh. That's it for Entheo Show number 3. Stay tuned. It'll be February 19th at 4 o'clock, episode 4. In the past, we've announced who our guests will be, but February 19th will be a surprise, even to us. We will see you then.
Peace,
Good seeing
guys.
everybody.
Peace,
Bye.
guys.
Take
Yeah.
care, everyone.
Bye.